Okay, let's go. Number 1. Zone Rouge, France's forbidden ground. You are walking a quiet forest path in northern France. The trees are old and tall. Moss covers everything. Birds move through the upper branches, and the light comes down in long cathedral shafts through the leaves. It is peaceful. It is beautiful. And the soil beneath your feet contains approximately 300 million undetonated shells, 12 million landmines, and enough arsenic, chlorine, phosgene, and mustard gas to kill every person in Europe, multiple times over. This is the Zone Rouge, the red zone. France officially classified it as uninhabitable in 1919. Over a century later, France has not changed its mind. When the First World War ended in November 1918, the French government sent survey teams to assess the damage across the northern and eastern regions, where fighting had been most intense. What they found was so severe that the assessors created an entirely new category of land, the Zone Rouge. At its maximum extent, the condemned area covered approximately 460 square miles, an area larger than the city of Los Angeles across the Ardennes, Champagne, and the Meuse Valley. These were not lands lightly damaged and in need of repair. These were lands declared permanently, officially, legally dead. The geology of the region had been chemically transformed. The soil itself had been saturated by decade-long exposure to explosive compounds, biological matter, and industrial toxins. In 9 specific villages, Fleury-Devant-Doyoumont, Louvimont-Côte-du-Poivre, Beaumont-en-Verdunois, Bezenvaux, Cumières-le-Mort-Homme, Haumont-Prix-Saint-Menu, Monaville, Ornes, and Vaux-Divent-Damloup, the destruction was so complete that the French government declared them permanently dead. They exist today only as administrative fictions. Communes with mayors, official seals, municipal budgets, and 0 inhabitants. The only thing that marks where Fleury stood is a small wooden church reconstruction, surrounded by the dimpled, cratered earth where 300,000 men died during the 10 months of the Battle of Verdun alone. France still employs more than 600 professional deminers whose sole occupation is recovering what the military calls the Prat Cat, iron harvest the shells, grenades, and mines that frost heave to the surface every winter. In an average year, these teams recover approximately 900 tons of unexploded ordnance. The projected completion date for clearing the most contaminated areas is 2045. Some specialists believe the work will never be finished. Beneath the surface, the situation is worse. Below Verdun lies a network of tunnels, some dug by French forces, some by German, some collapsing into each other in configurations no surviving map accurately shows. In these tunnels, the bodies of men still lie where they fell more than a century ago. Entire units advanced into tunnel systems and simply did not come out. During the war, both sides sent recovery teams in after failed assaults. Some of those recovery teams did not come out either. In 2006, a group of amateur historians entered an unmapped section beneath the Morthomme Ridge. Rescue teams located them 3 days later, suffering from gas exposure. Phosgene colorless, odorless, slower acting than chlorine still pools in depressions in the tunnel floors. You cannot smell it. You cannot see it. You simply begin to feel, after a few minutes of breathing it, that something is subtly wrong with the world. And then, if you don't leave, you don't leave. In some sections of the Zone Rouge, the topsoil is permanently red, not from iron. From the blood and decomposed remains of the men who were never recovered absorbed into the earth itself, identified by French soil analysts in studies conducted in the 1990s. The forest grows thick and green and silent over ground where nothing human should grow at all. In the years between 2000 and 2020, 12 French deminers died on the job. This is not history. The ground is still armed. The villages are still dead, and the soil is still waiting. Why does France employ full-time bomb disposal teams to clear land that has been at peace for over 100 years? Why are 9 villages still officially listed as permanently uninhabitable? What else lies in those tunnels, and why has no government invested in finding out? Number 2. The Overtown Bridge. It is a beautiful bridge. Victorian granite, completed in 1895, arching over a wooded gorge near Dumbarton in West Scotland. The stone is pale and worn smooth. The view from the parapet looks down into a rocky stream 40 to 50 feet below, rutting through birch and hawthorn. People walk their dogs here every day. It is a pleasant Sunday afternoon kind of place. And on the right-hand side of the bridge, in clear weather, something compels dogs to leap off it and has been doing so for over 60 years. Since the 1950s, more than 600 dogs have jumped from the same spot on Overtown Bridge. 50 or more have died. Some survived the fall, recovered, were brought back to the bridge by distressed owners and jumped again. The first thing to establish is that this is documented. This is not folklore. Veterinary researchers, animal behaviorists, and investigative journalists have spent years studying a consistent repeating pattern. Dogs approach the right-hand parapet of Overtown Bridge, often accelerating rather than being dragged, and leap. The pattern clusters in clear weather, particularly in summer and autumn. It clusters on the right-hand side only, and it almost exclusively involves dogs with long, narrow muzzles, collies, Labradors, Retrievers, Spaniels breeds with exceptional olfactory sensitivity. In 2006, David Sexton, an animal behaviorist working with the Scottish SPCA, conducted a formal investigation. His hypothesis was scent-based. Beneath the bridge's parapet, invisible to a dog's line of sight, the gorge walls were heavily populated by mink, mice, and squirrels, whose musky secretions had accumulated in the sheltered stonework. A dog with a long muzzle approaching the parapet would catch an overwhelming scent signal from directly below without being able to see the drop. The parapet is solid granite. At a dog's eye level it reveals only sky and stone, not the gorge beneath. Sexton tested it by dragging scent trails across the bridge and found that long-nosed breeds consistently tracked toward the parapet rather than along the path. But the clustering behavior is specific in ways that a scent distribution pattern cannot fully explain. Scent disperses across a surface. The jumps happen from the same 18-inch section of the right-hand parapet with a consistency that suggests something more concentrated than ambient musk. And the dogs that survived, returned, and jumped again were not following a new scent. They were returning to a location they had previously nearly died at. In 2006, a different kind of event at Overtown Bridge entered the record. Kevin Moy walked onto the bridge with his infant son. He threw the baby into the gorge below. Then he attempted to jump himself. His son survived. Moy was restrained, arrested, and later psychiatrically committed. He told police that a voice had commanded him to sacrifice the child, that the bridge demanded it. His son survived. Overtown House, which sits adjacent to the bridge, is a Scottish baronial estate built in the same era. In Celtic folklore tradition, this area has long been described as a thin place, a locus where the boundary between the living world and the next is unusually permeable. Every culture that has lived near Overtown Bridge has had a name for what it seems to do. The Celts had one. The Victorian owners noted the strangeness in private correspondence. Dog owners in Dumbarton are warned by local vets not to let their animals off the leash on the bridge. The scent hypothesis explains most of the dog deaths, at least partially. It does not explain why the jumps cluster at one specific spot rather than dispersing across the entire parapet where the scent would be equally distributed. It does not explain Kevin Moy. And it does not explain the dogs that survived, came back, and jumped again, animals with no mythology, no thin places, no voices. Just a spot on a bridge, and whatever it is that the spot says to them. What is it that makes a survival instinct reversible? Why does the compulsion appear to cluster at this specific point? And if a scent can override an animal's self-preservation, what does that suggest is underneath every other thing we believe we choose freely? Number 3. Centralia, Pennsylvania. There is a highway in Pennsylvania that simply ends. Route 61 south of Centralia buckles, cracks, heaves, splits, and then stops, blocked by orange barriers, with steam rising through the fissures in the pavement. On a cold morning, the steam is dense enough to obscure the road. From the right angle, it looks like something is breathing beneath the asphalt. Something is. A coal seam has been burning underground here since May 1962. At current rates, geologists estimate it will continue burning for another 250 years after you watch this, long after everyone watching this video is dead. Centralia had a population of approximately 2,700 in 1962. It now has 5. The fire began on May 27, 1962, when the Centralia Borough Council approved burning the town landfill as standard maintenance. The landfill sat above an abandoned mine shaft connected to the Mammoth Vein, a seam of anthracite coal running 8 miles long and several hundred feet deep. The fire descended through the landfill into the shaft and entered the coal. Anthracite burns at extreme temperature and produces minimal visible smoke. Once it catches in a sealed underground environment, it essentially cannot be extinguished. You cannot flood it, the tunnels are too extensive. You cannot smother it, there is no accessible oxygen pathway to block. You cannot excavate it, the burning zone shifts constantly as the fire moves. In 1981, 12-year-old Todd Domboski was playing in his grandmother's backyard when the ground opened beneath him. A sinkhole swallowed him to his armpits before his cousin grabbed his arm and pulled him out by the fingertips. The steam pouring from the hole registered 150 degrees Fahrenheit. The air in the sinkhole measured 94% carbon monoxide. Todd had been breathing it for roughly 30 seconds before he was pulled free. He survived. He was the child who made Congress pay attention. In 1984, Congress allocated $42 million to relocate Centralia's residents, roughly $120 million in today's dollars. Most accepted. They took the buyout, left their homes, and watched the state demolish what they had built. By 1992, Pennsylvania had condemned all remaining structures. In 2002, the United States Postal Service canceled Centralia's ZIP code, 17927, effectively erasing the town from official existence. But not everyone left. Several residents challenged the condemnation through the courts. After years of legal battles, 7 holdouts were granted lifetime rights to remain, on the condition that their properties would revert to the state upon their deaths. Most of those 7 have since died. A handful remain. They live above an underground fire in a town that officially does not exist, with no ZIP code, no functioning services, and ground temperatures that can exceed 180 degrees Fahrenheit just below the surface. Beneath Centralia, the fire now occupies an estimated 400 acres of underground mine tunnels. The precise boundaries are unknown, the tunnel systems are incompletely mapped, and the fire moves. CO and CO2 levels in the basements of still-standing structures have been measured at lethal concentrations. New sinkholes open without warning. Route 61 closed, fenced, cracked, warm to the touch on cold days, has become a destination. People drive to Centralia to stand on the road that goes nowhere and photograph the steam. The road's fractured surface, its ambient heat underfoot, its quality of being a place where infrastructure simply gave up and stopped, served as direct visual and conceptual inspiration for the Silent Hill video game series. The designers visited. They used what they saw. Why did a small Pennsylvania town burn for over 60 years while the government watched? Why couldn't the most technically advanced nation on Earth put out a coal fire? Why do 5 people still choose to live above it? Number 4. Ilha de Queimada, Grand Snake Island. Picture the approach by boat. 80 miles southeast of Sao Paulo, the ocean is bright, and the island in the distance looks like something from a travel brochure, heavily forested, steeply cliffed, a lighthouse visible on the ridge. You pull closer. The rocks at the shoreline appear to be moving. Because they are. Researchers from the Butantan Institute estimate the golden lancehead viper population of Ilha de Queimada Grande at between 2,000 and 4,000 individuals on 110 acres of land. 1 to 4 snakes per square meter. Every square meter. The Brazilian Navy banned civilian access in 1920. The ban is still in force. No exceptions. The golden lancehead, Bothrops insularis, is found nowhere else on Earth. It was isolated on Queimada Grande approximately 11,000 years ago, when rising post-glacial sea levels submerged the land bridge connecting the island to the Brazilian mainland, the same sea level rise that drowned other ancient coastlines. Trapped without terrestrial prey, and with abundant migratory seabirds as their only food source, the lanceheads evolved a venom approximately 5 times more potent than their mainland relatives. The ordinary lancehead viper is dangerous. This one is dangerous on a different scale. It had to be. A bird bitten mid-flight by a weak venom dies slowly enough to fly away and be lost. The golden lancehead's venom had to kill fast. It evolved accordingly. In a human, the venom causes local tissue necrosis. The flesh around the bite begins to die, followed by systemic hemorrhage, kidney failure, and intestinal necrosis. Victims die from untreated bites in under an hour. The phrase dissolving from the inside is not dramatic. It is clinical and accurate. The Brazilian Navy maintains the lighthouse remotely. It was automated because human keepers could not safely live on the island. According to records passed through Brazilian maritime tradition, the last keeper stationed there arrived with his family in the early 1920s. One night, snakes entered through a window. He was found days later in his boat, dead, attempting to row to the mainland, his body covered in bites. His family was found in the lighthouse. None of them made it as far as the boat. This is listed as maritime legend rather than verified fact. The Navy automated the lighthouse regardless. Authorized research visits require Brazilian Navy escort, Navy approval, and by official regulation, a licensed physician on the expedition team. Even with these provisions, conditions are extreme. Herpetologists Otavio Marques and Marcio Martins, who have conducted multiple authorized expeditions for the Butantan Institute, report that in forested sections it is impossible to take a step without first moving a snake. The animals rest on tree branches at head height. They cluster in crevices and under rocks. They are not aggressive by nature. Bothrops insularis strikes defensively, not predatorily but at those densities. Defense is unavoidable. The black market adds another layer of danger. A live golden lancehead commands between $10,000 and $30,000. The venom contains a thrombin-like enzyme being studied for potential cardiovascular drug applications. Pharmaceutical interest drives collector demand. Poachers attempt the island periodically. The Navy intercepts those they find. The ones they do not find are not found by anyone else. The island does not distinguish between naval authority and criminal enterprise when it comes to what happens to people who reach the shore unprepared. How did a single species evolve to be so comprehensively lethal that a government bans all human access to an island? What happens to the poachers the Navy never intercepts? And how many other places like this exist officially closed, officially dangerous that we've simply decided not to talk about? Number 5. Lake Nyos, Cameroon. It is the night of August 20th, 1986. In the villages surrounding Lake Nyos in northwestern Cameroon, people are sleeping. Cattle stand in their fields. The lake is 3 miles away, calm and dark, sitting in the depression of an old volcanic crater. At approximately 9:30 in the evening, a low rumbling passes through the surrounding valleys. Not an explosion. Not a storm. A slow exhalation, something vast releasing what it had held for decades. Within 2 hours, 1,700 people and 3,500 cattle are dead. The lake has turned blood red, and there is not a mark on any of the bodies. Lake Nyos sits above a volcanic magma reservoir that continuously bleeds carbon dioxide into the deepest water of the lake. Because CO2 is highly soluble under pressure, and the lake is deep enough to maintain that pressure at its base, the gas dissolves harmlessly into the bottom water, year after year, accumulating in concentration. The lake becomes a sealed, pressurized vessel, stable as long as the water column remains stratified, stable as long as nothing disturbs it. Think of a sealed 2-liter bottle of carbonated water. Leave it still, and nothing happens. Shake it, then open it, and what you get is a limnic eruption. On August 20th, the trigger was likely a landslide, or a wind-driven overturn of the water column, enough disturbance to cause the CO2-saturated bottom water to rise. As it rose, pressure decreased. The gas came out of solution all at once. An estimated 1.6 million tons of CO2, the equivalent of burning 7 pracs, 700,000 tons of coal, in a single instant erupted from the surface in minutes, rising in a cloud that reached approximately 328 feet high, before cascading back down the surrounding hillsides at roughly 45 miles per hour. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air. The cloud did not disperse upward. It flowed down. It followed the valleys, the roads, the footpaths, the low terrain between villages. It entered homes through open windows and doors. It flowed across the fields where the cattle stood. Because it is colorless, odorless, and tasteless, no one knew it was coming. You simply stopped having sufficient oxygen to remain conscious, and then you stopped having it to live. Festus Quay, one of a handful of survivors from the village of Nyos itself, was on a second floor when the cloud passed. He survived because he was slightly above its flow path. He emerged at dawn into a village where every other person was dead. The bodies showed no signs of violence. No distress, no attempt to flee. Many were found exactly where they had been at 9:30 that evening, lying in bed, collapsed in yards, seated at tables. Some were found mid-step. Death had been that fast. The lake ran red for days. Iron-rich water from the deep had overturned and oxidized in open air. Rescue teams could not safely enter the valleys for hours after the event. 2 years earlier, in 1984, Lake Manawan, 8 miles away, had a smaller limnic eruption that killed 37 people. The deaths were attributed at the time to a road accident and an electrical failure. No one connected them until Nyos happened. Since 2001, French and Cameroonian scientists have been siphoning CO2 from Lake Nyos's depths through a passive pipe system. The concentration has dropped significantly, but the volcanic source keeps adding gas. And Lake Kivu, across the border in the Democratic Republic of Congo, is 500 times larger than Lake Nyos, sits above the same type of volcanic system, and has 2 million people living on its shores. Lake Nyos killed 1,700 with no warning. What happens when the next one does? Number 6. The Alnwick Poison Garden. The gate is black iron. The skull and crossbones are cast into the metalwork at eye level. The sign on the gate reads, in plain English, "These plants can kill." Beyond the gate, in a walled garden in Northumberland, in the north of England, grow approximately 100 plant species. Every single one is toxic, narcotic, psychoactive, or lethal. This is the Alnwick Poison Garden, and it was built this way on purpose, by a person who was bored of gardens that were merely educational. Jane Percy, the Duchess of Northumberland, began redesigning the grounds of Alnwick Castle in 2000. While visiting Padua's historic botanical garden in Italy, which maintains a small section of toxic plants, she noticed that the poison section drew more attention, more sustained engagement, and more genuine learning than anything else in the garden. She went home and asked the question, what if everything in the enclosure had the specific quality of being able to kill a person? What if that were the organizing principle? Alnwick's Poison Garden opened in 2005. It is now the most visited section of the entire Alnwick complex, drawing 800,000 visitors per year. What grows inside the walls? Atropa belladonna, deadly nightshade whose berries look like blueberries and contain atropine and scopolamine in concentrations that cause hallucinations, tachycardia, and cardiac arrest. Conium maculatum. Hemlock the plant used to execute Socrates in 399 BCE, causing progressive ascending paralysis, beginning at the feet. Strychnos nux vomica, source of strychnine blocks glycine receptors and causes sustained convulsive muscle contractions until the respiratory muscles give out. Aconitum, wolfsbane, whose alkaloids are acutely toxic enough to be absorbed through unbroken skin, the reason it was historically used to poison arrowheads and wolf bait. And Ricinus communis, the castor bean plant from whose seeds ricin can be extracted, one of the most acutely lethal substances in nature. A single seed contains enough raw precursor to synthesize a fatal dose for multiple people. The castor bean plant is in a cage. Many of the most dangerous specimens are caged individually. Visitors are warned at every turn. Do not touch, do not smell, do not pick up anything that has fallen on the path. In warm weather, some plants, particularly Brugmansia, the angel's trumpets release volatile scopolamine and related tropane alkaloids into the air inside the walled enclosure. Visitors have fainted in the poison garden without touching a single plant, simply from standing still and breathing. The garden's guides watch for the signs. School groups come through the poison garden, hundreds of them annually. Children of 10 and 11 years old walking carefully between plants that would kill, them in gram quantities guided by staff who explain exactly what hemlock looks like, what it smells like, and what Socrates experienced in the hours after he drank it. The Duchess considers this educational success. The parents who signed the permission slips apparently agree. In 1978, Bulgarian dissident Georgi Markov was crossing Waterloo Bridge in London when he felt a sting in his calf. A man with an umbrella had passed him. The umbrella had injected a ricin pellet, encased in platinum, into his leg. He died 4 days later. UK Home Office records confirmed the cause. The plant that produces ricin is growing in Northumberland behind a black iron gate, fully alive and photogenic for the tourists who come to see it. How did a garden where every plant is designed to kill become one of Britain's most popular tourist destinations? What does it say about us that we line up to stand next to the things that could kill us and call it education? And which plant in there would you least want to brush past? Number 7. The Sedlec ossuary. You descend a short staircase into a low, arched space beneath a small Roman Catholic chapel in Kutna Hora in the Czech Republic. The light is dim. Something above you catches your eye. A chandelier enormous, hanging from the vaulted ceiling, scattering light across the walls in fragmented patterns. And then your eyes adjust, and you understand what you are looking at. Every bone in the human body, all 206 of them in an adult skeleton, is represented in that chandelier, once each, wired and arranged into a structure that is both entirely functional and entirely made of people. There are 4 such chandeliers in the room. On the walls, garlands, In the corners, pyramids. On the right wall, a coat of arms. All of it built from the remains of between 40,000 and 70,000 human beings. You are still standing on the staircase. You have not moved. The Sedlec ossuary exists because of a quantity problem that took centuries to become a craft project. In 1278, Henry, the abbot of the Sedlec Cistercian monastery, returned from Jerusalem with a handful of soil from Golgotha and scattered it over the cemetery. Word spread across Central Europe. Pilgrims began arranging to be buried at Sedlec. When the Black Death arrived in the 14th century and killed tens of thousands in the region. When the Hussite Wars killed tens of thousands more in the 15th century. The cemetery could not keep pace. The ground could not hold them all. In 1400, a half-blind monk was assigned to exhume older remains and make room. He stacked the bones in the chapel crypt, femurs, skulls, ribs, small bones in neat architectural piles, floor to ceiling. The accumulation eventually reached between 40,000 and 70,000 sets of remains. They sat there, sorted by type, for 4 centuries. In 1870, the Schwarzenberg noble family hired a woodcarver named František Rindt to do something definitive with the bones. He spent years working through the crypt. He built 4 Baroque pyramids of sorted skeletal material in the chapel's corners. He assembled garlands of alternating skulls and femurs that drape between the pillars like oversized stone jewelry or like something that is trying to be jewelry and has chosen the wrong medium. He constructed 2 large chalices flanking the altar, built entirely from bones. And on the right wall, the Schwarzenberg coat of arms. The shield, the heraldic elements, every component faithfully rendered in human remains. In the upper corner, a raven assembled from finger bones, perches, and pecks at a severed head, rendered from a human skull at the empty socket where the eye would be. The Schwarzenberg family crest had a raven pecking at a head. Rindt reproduced it exactly, in the only material available to him. At the base of his largest decorative piece, Rindt signed his name. In bones. You are standing in this room, and what you are confronting is the specific thing that František Rindt confronted. 70,000 people reduced to material. And the question is not whether what he did was wrong, or right, or beautiful, or disturbing, because it is all of those things simultaneously. The question is what it means that a woodcarver hired by an aristocratic family looked at the remains of 70,000 people and understood them as the most expressive material he had ever worked with. He signed his name in them. He meant it as an artist's signature. The ossuary sees 200,000 visitors per year. It is a UNESCO heritage site and an active Roman Catholic church. People file through quietly and leave attempting to process what they've seen. What do you do with 70,000 people? What, finally, is a person made of? And why does beauty and horror keep arriving in the same room? Number 8. The Catacombs of Paris. You have been walking for 3 hours. The limestone walls press close on either side, barely wide enough for 2 people to pass, and the ceiling is low enough that tall visitors must duck. The tunnels branch constantly. Left, right, left, another junction, another passage going somewhere darker. Your phone shows no signal. The battery is at 31%. In every direction, stacked floor to ceiling and extending back into the rock as far as your light reaches, are human skulls and femurs arranged in interlocking patterns that have not shifted in 200 years. You are somewhere beneath the 14th arrondissement of Paris. 6 million people are very close to you. None of them can help. The Catacombs of Paris extend beneath approximately 116 square miles of the city, a network of former limestone quarries stretching an estimated 186 miles in total tunnel length. The stone quarried from this system built Notre Dame, the Louvre, and most of pre-modern Paris. By the late 18th century, centuries of quarrying had structurally compromised the city above. Streets were collapsing. Buildings were sinking. In 1777, the Inspection Générale des Carrières was established, an administrative body whose entire purpose was to map, reinforce, and manage the network of voids beneath Paris's foundations. The bones arrived in 1786. The Cemetery of the Innocents, which had served Paris since the 10th century and accumulated the remains of 6 million people, the dead of plague years, famine years, war years, ordinary years, had become a public health crisis so severe that nearby residents were becoming sick from groundwater contamination. The Archbishop of Paris authorized transfer of the remains to the quarries. Workers carrying lanterns moved through the tunnels for decades, stacking skulls, femurs, and smaller bones into the architectural patterns that visitors still see today. In 1793, during a transfer operation, a section of tunnel collapsed. Several workers were trapped. Some were recovered. Some were not. Their bones joined the 6 million. The official museum section 1.2 miles of lit, labeled Guided Passage, sees 500,000 visitors per year and is safe, managed, and clearly marked. Beyond it, 185 miles of additional tunnels that are illegal to enter without authorization. They are entered regularly. Cataphiles, the community of urban explorers who have claimed the forbidden tunnels as their domain, have been active since the 1970s. They have painted murals on tunnel walls that art historians now consider significant works. They have built furniture. They have established gathering places and regular meeting routes. In 2004, Paris police responding to a suspicious activity report in the tunnels found an entire cinema complex, a functioning movie theater, a bar, a restaurant with food, projection reels loaded with films, and a working electrical system, all built by cataphiles without authorization over a period of years. A note left for the police read, "Do not try to find us." 2 teenagers became disoriented and lost in the tunnels in 2017. They survived after 3 days when searchers following their trail found them. Others have not been found. The passage system floods in some sections after heavy rain. Sections exist that have never been mapped. The darkness, when your light fails, is total. Cataphiles who have spent decades in the tunnels speak of something beyond the practical dangers. A quality of the space itself, a sense of something vast and indifferent just beyond what your light can reach. 6 million dead beneath a city of 2 million living. The ones who choose to go among them sometimes don't come back. The ones who do come back often describe the experience as having changed something fundamental in how they understand what a city is and what it's built on. Number 9. Aokigahara Forest. The forest is at the foot of Mount Fuji, and it is very quiet, not the quiet of a park or a nature reserve, a different kind of quiet. Aokigahara, the sea of trees, grew from the hardened lava of Fuji's eruption in 864 CE, and the volcanic rock beneath the soil absorbs sound. You can step 20 feet off the trail and hear nothing. Not wind, not other visitors, not your own footsteps. The compass you brought does not work reliably here. The magnetic iron in the basalt below disrupts the needle. The trees grow close together and block direct sunlight. In overcast weather, the light inside Aokigahara is gray and directionless, without shadows, without the visual cues that normally orient a moving person. If you lose the trail, finding it again is not straightforward. This is why experienced visitors carry a spool of plastic tape unrolled behind them as they walk, so they can follow it back. When volunteers later find the tape leading into the forest with no one at the end of it, they follow it. Aokigahara covers 8,650 acres on the northwestern slope of Mount Fuji in Yamanashi Prefecture. Its root systems grow over and around rough lava rock, creating an uneven, tangled floor where ankle injuries from hidden gaps in the rock surface are common. The forest has been associated in Japanese cultural tradition with death and supernatural phenomena since at least the Edo period. Ubasut, the practice, documented in folklore and possibly historical record, of leaving elderly relatives in remote places during famines, is connected in regional memory to this forest specifically. In 1960, author Saiko Matsumoto published Tower of Waves, a novel in which 2 characters die by suicide in Aokigahara. The book sold millions of copies. Yuriko Suzuki, at the National Institute of Mental Health in Tokyo, is among the researchers who have argued that Matsumoto's novel significantly amplified Aokigahara's modern association with suicide in the Japanese cultural imagination. Whether or not the book created the pattern, it documented it in a way that made the pattern more known. The Yamanashi prefectural government stopped publishing annual body count statistics in 2004, citing concern that the numbers were functioning as a kind of dark advertisement. The last officially released figure showed 78 deaths in a single year. In 2010, 247 people entered Aokigahara intending to die. 54 succeeded. The signs are posted throughout the forest in Japanese and English urging visitors to turn back, listing crisis hotline numbers, containing messages like, "Your life is precious. Think of your family. The signs have been there for decades. They are not sufficient." Since 1971, Azusa Hayano and a team of volunteers have conducted annual body sweeps of Aokigahara, walking grid, patterns through the forest for weeks at a time to find the dead before winter makes recovery impossible. Hayano has been doing this work for more than 30 years. He says that the hardest findings are the ones that show a change of mind individuals found in positions suggesting they tried to stop what was happening at the last moment. Some had dug their fingers into the soil. The forest does not close. There are no fences at the perimeter, no gates, no barriers. You can walk into Aokigahara at any time. Most people who do come back. The tape they left on the trail is waiting for them. But some tape leads into the trees without a person on the other end. And the volunteers who follow it know, by the time they're unrolling someone else's trail marker, what they are most likely going to find. Why does Aokigahara draw people to it in ways that most forests do not? What is it about specific physical places that seems to amplify certain kinds of human despair? And why, in a forest where 247 people once went to die in a single year, do we still have no reliable way to stop it? Number 10. The Mariana Trench. The descent takes hours. In a deep-sea submersible traveling at the speeds these vehicles travel, reaching the bottom of the Mariana Trench from the ocean surface takes approximately 3 hours. During that descent, the pressure on the hull increases continuously. At 1,000 feet, 445 pounds per square inch. At 10,000 feet, 4,450 psi. At Challenger Deep, the confirmed lowest point on Earth, at 36,089 feet below sea level, the pressure on every square inch of hull is approximately 16,000 pounds. That is 1,100 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. For reference, the pressure at which a steel beverage can will crush is roughly 90 psi. The Mariana Trench applies 16,000. The Mariana Trench is a crescent-shaped scar in the floor of the western Pacific Ocean, east of the Mariana Islands. It was first measured in 1875 by HMS Challenger, which lowered a weighted rope and concluded it had found the bottom at approximately 26,000 feet. It had not. The actual bottom of Challenger Deep was first reached by a crewed vehicle on January 20th, 1960, when Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh descended in the bathyscaphe Trieste. They spent 20 minutes on the bottom. During those 20 minutes, they saw a flatfish resting on the sediment, a complex animal, alive and apparently functional, at a pressure and depth that all prior models of biology had predicted would be impossible. Then one of the viewport windows developed a crack. They ascended. In the 1990s, the United States Navy's SOS U.S. Hydrophone Array, installed during the Cold War to track Soviet submarines, began recording an anomalous sound from somewhere in the Pacific. Extraordinarily loud, traveling enormous distances, bearing characteristics that acousticians described as consistent with biological origin. NOAA cataloged it and named it the bloop. In 2012, NOAA researchers concluded that the bloop was most likely caused by icequakes, Antarctic ice sheets fracturing. A meaningful number of acousticians continue to dispute this conclusion. The original recording is publicly available. You can listen to it tonight. In 2009, the unmanned vehicle Nereus reached Challenger Deep. In 2014, Nereus was deployed to explore another deep-sea trench and imploded under pressure. Destroyed. Debris recovered. Data from its final dive partially recovered. It had been recording unusual biological signatures at depth. In 2012, James Cameron descended to Challenger Deep alone in the Deep-Sea Challenger, the first solo crewed descent to the lowest point on Earth. He spent 3 hours on the bottom. He described it as complete desolation. The samples his vehicle brought back from that descent contained something no researcher expected. The sediment at Challenger Deep, the deepest, most remote, most inaccessible point on Earth, was contaminated with polychlorinated biphenyls and flame retardants at concentrations up to 50 times higher than those found in one of China's most heavily polluted rivers. Confirmed in 2017 by Alan Jameson at Newcastle University, published in Nature Ecology and Evolution. We have never been to Challenger Deep. We poisoned it anyway. We did it from the surface, without knowing, across 36,000 feet of ocean, just by existing the way we exist. Approximately 80% of Earth's oceans remain unmapped at any useful resolution. Less than 0.05% of the ocean floor has been directly sampled. The total crewed time at Challenger Deep is measured in hours, a handful of expeditions, a few hours of observation, almost no data. We do not know what lives there. We do not know what the bloop was. We do not know what Nereus was recording. Every place on this list drew people in and didn't fully give them back. The Zone Rouge still holds its dead in the soil. The bridge calls to dogs and keeps calling. The Mariana Trench holds everything we throw at it, and if something down there in the pressure and the dark has noticed we're coming, it has not sent anything back up to say so. In 10 places across this video, a French forest, a Scottish bridge, a Pennsylvania town on fire, a Brazilian island, a Cameroonian lake, an English garden, a Czech chapel, the tunnels under Paris, a Japanese forest, and the deepest point on earth, the common thread, is the same. Something about certain places resists us. Resists our presence, our understanding, our explanations, and sometimes our return. If you made it to the bottom, subscribe, so you're there for the next one. Drop a like if any of these places got under your skin. And let us know in the comments, which place on this list would you actually go to? And where in the world are you watching from?